My name is Tamara Coleman, and I'm a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I've always been the one who worked hard, stayed up late studying, and scraped by on part-time jobs to pay my way through college. But my parents, they had other plans for me. One night during spring break, they told me something, and that conversation turned my whole world upside down. They didn't ask me to keep chasing my dreams, they demanded I throw them away. Their reason: my younger sister, their golden child, had big dreams of becoming a pop star, and they expected me to drop out of college, get a full-time job, and foot the bill for her fancy music academy in Los Angeles, $30,000 a year to be exact. I was floored. I'd spent years grinding, earning scholarships, and proving myself while my sister flitted from one hobby to another, never sticking with anything. Yet they saw her as the family's shining star, and me as the one who should sacrifice everything. When I said no, their reaction wasn't just disappointment, it was a full-on campaign to make me pay for my defiance. What they did next pushed me to a breaking point, and the fallout changed our family forever. Stick around to see how I fought back, and what it cost them. Have you ever faced family pressure to give up your dreams? Drop your story in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to catch how this drama unfolds. Growing up in Lincoln, our two-story house felt cozy but always carried an undercurrent of tension. My dad, Lester Coleman, was a loan officer at a local bank, spending his days approving mortgages and balancing ledgers. My mom, Darlene Coleman, worked as a retail sales associate, winning over customers with her warm smile at a department store downtown. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where kids rode bikes until dusk, and neighbors kept their lawns neat, but didn't get too nosy. We weren't rich, but we had enough until my sister's dreams started draining the family's savings. My younger sister, Tatum Coleman, was the apple of their eye. From the time she was 8, they shelled out money for her passions: $200 a month for voice lessons, another $250 for dance classes, and a top-of-the-line recording setup that cost over $1,000. They called her their future star, convinced she'd be the next big name in pop music. She'd sing covers of chart-topping hits in our living room, her voice echoing through the house, and my parents would applaud like she was performing at Madison Square Garden. But Tatum had a pattern: she'd dive into something new, full of excitement, only to quit when it got hard. Her voice coach pushed her to work on pitch; she dropped the lessons. Her dance instructor demanded discipline; she walked away after a month. By 18, she'd tried guitar acting and even a short-lived stint as a songwriter, leaving behind half-finished projects and a pile of bills. Still, my parents saw every whim as a sign of her destiny. I was the opposite. At 16, I started working part-time at Lincoln General Hospital, cleaning exam rooms and stocking supplies to save for college. I wasn't a straight-A student, but I studied hard, poring over anatomy notes until midnight to earn a partial scholarship to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's nursing program. It covered half my tuition, so I kept working, picking up extra shifts to pay for books and rent. My grades were solid, mostly A's, a couple of B's, and I took pride in building my own path. But to Mom and Dad, my efforts were just expected. They'd skim my report cards, say that's nice, and turn back to Tatum's latest YouTube video, which usually featured her struggling through a song with autotune cranked to the max. They never said it outright, but I was the reliable one, the one who'd keep things together while they bankrolled Tatum's dreams. The favoritism wasn't just about money. It was the way they talked about her, like she was the family's golden ticket. Tatum's got that spark, Dad would brag, showing her videos to his bank colleagues over lunch. Mom would chime in, "She just needs a little push to make it big." That push always seemed to land on me. When I was 17, they asked me to skip a school science fair to chip in for Tatum's $500 microphone, which she used twice before tossing it aside. When I got my scholarship, they didn't throw a party. They asked if I could help out with her dance recital costumes, another $300 down the drain. I'd nod, swallow my frustration, and keep grinding, but it hurt. My achievements, my late nights, my hospital shifts, my scholarship were invisible next to Tatum's potential. One evening when I was still in high school, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat Mom and Dad down at the kitchen table, my voice shaky, and asked why they always put Tatum first. "You're doing fine," Tamara, Dad said, barely looking up from his coffee. "Your sister needs more support to shine." Mom added, "You're strong. You'll make it on your own." It was like my hard work was a given while Tatum's dreams were a precious investment. I walked away from that table feeling like I didn't matter, like my future was just a tool to prop up hers. That moment stuck with me. It taught me to rely on myself to push through long shifts and tough exams without expecting a pat on the back. During spring break of my junior year, the family tension boiled over. I'd come home from campus expecting a quiet week to catch up on sleep and study for midterms. Instead, my parents set up a video call that felt more like a courtroom trial. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, staring at Mom and Dad's faces on the screen. They didn't waste time with small talk. Dad cleared his throat and said, "Tamara, we need to talk about your sister's future." My stomach sank. I knew where this was going, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. They laid it out plain and simple. They wanted me to drop out of college, get a full-time job at the hospital, where I'd been working part-time, and help pay for my sister's tuition at a music academy in Los Angeles. The price tag, a whopping $30,000 a year. I couldn't believe it. I'd spent years busting my tail to stay in school, balancing shifts and exams, while my sister had never stuck with anything longer than a few months. "Dad, she's never even finished a single music project," I said, my voice shaking with disbelief. "She quits every time it gets hard. Why should I give up my degree for that?" Mom's face hardened. "Tamara, don't be selfish," she snapped. "Your sister has a real shot at making it big. You're already doing fine. You can always go back to school later." I tried to reason with them. I pointed out how Tatum had dropped voice lessons after complaining about early mornings, how her dance classes ended because she didn't vibe with the teacher, how her guitar sat untouched in her closet. "She's not ready for this," I said. "You're betting everything on a dream that's not even hers half the time." But Dad cut me off. "You don't get it, Tamara," he said, his voice low and sharp. "She's special. She needs this chance, and you're the one who can make it happen." Mom piled on, her tone softer but just as cutting. "We've always supported you, honey. Can't you do this one thing for your family?" It was a classic guilt trip, and it hit me like a punch. They weren't asking, they were demanding I sacrifice my future for Tatum's whims. I felt trapped, like the walls of our cozy kitchen were closing in. I ended the call with a shaky, "I'll think about it," but I knew I couldn't give in. That night, I drove to my aunt's house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Aunt Velma Brooks. My mom's older sister lived across town in a small apartment filled with books and old jazz records. She was a no-nonsense accountant who'd always seen through the family's dynamics. When I told her about the call, she didn't hesitate. "Tamara, your parents are wrong," she said, her voice firm. "You've worked too hard to throw it all away. Your sister's dreams aren't your responsibility." She poured me a cup of tea and sat me down, her eyes steady. "You're not selfish for wanting your own life. Don't let them guilt you into thinking you are." Aunt Velma's words were like a lifeline. She reminded me of everything I'd built: my scholarship, my hospital job, my nursing classes. "You're so close to finishing," she said. "If you give that up now, you might never get it back." She told me about her own choice years ago to walk away from family pressure and build a career on her terms. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. "You have to draw a line, Tamara," she said. "They'll keep pushing until you do." I left her place feeling stronger, like I could breathe again. For the first time, I saw a path forward that didn't involve giving in. Back at home, I couldn't sleep. My parents' words echoed in my head: selfish, fine, special. I kept thinking about all the times I'd bitten my tongue, all the sacrifices I'd already made. I wasn't just fighting for my degree, I was fighting for my right to matter. I didn't know how far they'd go to get what they wanted, but I knew I wasn't backing down. Back at school, I tried to bury myself in studies, but the drama kept pulling me back. After that spring break video call, my parents didn't let up. A week later, I got a text from Mom. "We're cutting your monthly allowance. You need to step up for your sister." Just like that, the $500 they sent for rent and groceries gone. My bank account was already stretched thin from textbooks and bills, and now I was staring at a negative balance. I had no choice but to pick up overnight shifts at Lincoln General Hospital, dragging myself through 12-hour stints, cleaning equipment and restocking supplies. I'd stumble back to my dorm at dawn, my eyes burning, trying to stay awake for morning lectures. It felt like my parents were punishing me for saying no, and the weight of it was crushing. Then my sister took it public. One night, I opened my phone to a notification from Tatum's social media, a long ranting post that hit me like a slap. "My sister's too jealous to support my music dreams," she wrote, tagging me so everyone could see. "She'd rather keep me down than help me shine." She'd posted a selfie, all dramatic with teary eyes, and her friends flooded the comments with support. "You're a star," Tatum, one wrote. Another called me selfish without even knowing the whole story. I scrolled through the post, my face hot with anger. We'd had our fights, but airing it online like this, it was a betrayal. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, classmates, mutual friends, even people I barely knew piling on. I wanted to scream, but I just turned off my phone and tried to focus on my nursing notes. I wasn't alone, though. My best friends Carissa Morgan and Vance Myers saw me unraveling and stepped in. Carissa, a psychology major with a knack for finding solutions, noticed me dozing off in the library one afternoon. "Tamara, you look like a zombie," she said, sliding me a coffee. She dragged me to the student aid office where we spent hours digging through scholarship applications. She found a $2,000 grant for nursing students that I qualified for, which covered half my rent for the semester. Vance, a computer science major who always had my back, heard about a part-time gig at the campus bookstore. "It's not glamorous, but it's better than those graveyard shifts," he said, helping me fill out the application. With their help, I landed the job, which paid just enough to keep me afloat without killing myself at the hospital. Their support felt like a lifeline, reminding me I didn't have to fight this alone. One day during a clinical skills class, my professor, Dr. Hilda King, pulled me aside. Dr. King was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been a nurse for decades before teaching. She'd noticed me struggling to stay focused, my hands shaking from exhaustion during a practice exam. "Tamara, you're one of my best students, but you're burning out," she said, her voice calm but firm. She asked what was going on, and I spilled everything: the video call, my parents' demands, the cutoff allowance, Tatum's post. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. Then she said, "You need to protect your future, not theirs." She told me about a competitive internship at Bryan Medical Center, a top hospital in Lincoln. "It's intense, but it could lead to a job after graduation," she said. "I think you're ready for it." I was floored. She believed in me when I could barely believe in myself. I spent that night researching the program, filling out the application with a spark of hope I hadn't felt in weeks. But even with my friends and Dr. King in my corner, the pressure didn't let up. My parents kept texting, each message sharper than the last. "You're letting your sister down," Dad wrote. Mom sent voice messages, her tone dripping with disappointment. "We raised you better than this." Tatum's post was still gaining traction, and I overheard classmates whispering about it in the cafeteria. I felt like I was drowning, caught between my family's expectations and my own dreams. But something inside me was shifting. I wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. I was fighting to prove them wrong. That summer, Tatum called me, and it wasn't to catch up. I was drained from a long shift at the bookstore and gearing up for my internship when my phone buzzed with her name. After her social media post calling me a jealous sister, I braced myself for trouble but answered anyway. "Tamara, you're ruining my life," Tatum snapped, her voice trembling with anger. You're why I can't go to music school. You need to apologize and help pay for it. Her words hit like a punch, blaming me for mom and dad's decision to cut my allowance. I clenched my jaw, trying to stay calm. She was twisting everything, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I took a deep breath and let it out. Tatum, I'm not the problem here. I said, my voice steady but firm. You've never stuck with anything. You dropped voice lessons because they were too early. You quit dance class over a teacher you didn't like. Your guitar's collecting dust in your closet. Why should I give up my future for a dream you don't even fight for? There was silence. Then she exploded. You're just jealous because I'm the talented one, she shouted. You hate that I could be a star while you're stuck in your boring nursing world. That stung, but it also fueled me. Talent's nothing without discipline, I fired back. You think you're special, but you give up every time it gets hard. I'm not throwing away my degree for that. The call turned into a shouting match, her accusing me of sabotaging her dreams, me pointing out every project she'd abandoned. I hung up when her voice cracked into sobs, my hands shaking my chest tight. I'd never been so blunt with her, but I didn't regret a word. A few days later, I got a text from my cousin Gail Carter, someone I hadn't talked to in years. Gail, a 25-year-old bartender in Omaha, had chased a music career in her teens and crashed hard. She asked to meet, so I drove to a cozy coffee shop near her place where she sat waiting, her red-dyed hair catching the light. Over steaming lattes, she opened up. I thought I could just charm my way into the music industry, she said, her voice low. Moved to Nashville at 19, convinced my voice would carry me, but I didn't practice enough. Didn't take feedback seriously. I'd show up to auditions half prepared and the rejections broke me. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. Tatum's on the same path. Her voice is okay, but she's not putting in the work. I've watched her videos, she's got potential, but she's sloppy, unfocused. The industry doesn't care about almost good enough. Gail's story wasn't just about her failure. It was a mirror of Tatum's mistakes. Don't let her pull you down, Tamara, she said. You're building something solid. Hold on to it. Gail's words lit a fire in me. I wasn't just fighting for my degree. I was fighting for my right to choose my own path. I threw myself into my internship, pouring every ounce of energy into each shift, determined to prove I belonged. Back at school, I stayed up late studying, ignoring the occasional texts from mom and dad, their messages still heavy with guilt. Tatum didn't call again, but her social media was a constant stream of posts about her struggle and how her family let her down. I blocked her to cut through the noise. Carissa and Vance kept me grounded, dragging me to study groups and cracking jokes to lighten my mood. Every exam I aced, every shift I nailed felt like a step away from my family's chaos. I wasn't just saying no to Tatum's demands, I was saying yes to myself. I didn't know how long it would take for them to see it, but I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. By my senior year, I was balancing schoolwork and constant family pressure. The internship at Bryan Medical Center had become my lifeline. I spent long days shadowing nurses, managing patient charts, and assisting with procedures like wound care and medication rounds. My supervisors praised my attention to detail, and Dr. King pulled me aside one afternoon in the hospital break room. Tamara, you've got a real gift for this, she said, her voice warm but direct. The head nurse wants to recommend you for a full-time position after you graduate. It's yours if you keep this up. I could barely speak, my chest tight with pride. For the first time in years, someone saw my hard work for what it was, not a means to an end, but a path to my own future. I threw myself into the internship, staying late to review protocols and practicing skills until I could do them in my sleep. It wasn't just about the job offer, it was about proving I could build something for myself. Meanwhile, Tatum had flown to Los Angeles for a major audition with a music agency, one my parents had pinned all their hopes on. They'd been talking it up for weeks, texting me updates I didn't ask for. Your sister's going to make it big, Mom wrote. But when Tatum called them from LA, her voice cracking over the phone, I overheard the fallout from my dorm. She'd been rejected, flat out told her vocals were unpolished, and her stage presence lacked confidence. The agency suggested she take more lessons and try again in a year, but Tatum was crushed, and so were Mom and Dad. I wasn't surprised. I'd seen her pattern of giving up when things got tough, and Gail's warning about the music industry echoed in my mind. But my parents didn't see it that way. They doubled down, refusing to let her dream die. I found out from Aunt Velma that Mom and Dad had taken out a second mortgage on the house to fund another shot for Tatum. The loan was hefty, $50,000 to cover more lessons, a vocal coach, and a trip back to LA. Aunt Velma called me one evening, her voice tight with worry. "Your dad's working overtime at the bank and your mom's taken extra shifts," she said. "They're stretching themselves thin, Tamara. It's not your fault, but they're blaming you for not helping." The news hit hard. Our family home, the one place that had always felt stable, was now at risk because of their obsession with Tatum's destiny. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by anger. They were willing to gamble everything, our house, their savings, for a dream Tatum wasn't ready for, while ignoring the life I was building. That was when I decided enough was enough. I couldn't keep letting their choices drag me down. I sent Mom and Dad a text, my hands steady, as I typed, "I'm not discussing Tatum's dreams anymore. I'm focusing on my degree and my career. Please respect that." I blocked their numbers for the first time, silencing the constant stream of guilt trip messages. I did the same with Tatum after she sent me a voice memo, her tone bitter. "You're abandoning us when we need you most." It wasn't easy. Every notification I ignored felt like a stab, but I knew it was the only way to protect myself. I stopped checking her social media, where she was now posting about family betrayal to gain sympathy. I leaned on Carissa and Vance, who kept me grounded with late-night study sessions and bad campus pizza. Their support, along with Dr. King's encouragement, kept me focused. I poured everything into my final year. I aced my exams, took on extra shifts at the bookstore, and prepared for the internship's final evaluation. Every step felt like a declaration I wasn't just surviving their pressure, I was thriving despite it. Setting those boundaries wasn't about cutting my family out, it was about choosing myself. I didn't know if they'd ever see my side, but I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. My future was in my hands, and I was ready to fight for it. At Aunt Velma's house for Thanksgiving, I faced my family for the last time. The air was thick with the smell of roasted turkey and tension as we gathered around her dining table. Mom and Dad had insisted on this dinner, claiming it was a chance to heal the family. I sat across from Tatum, who avoided my eyes, her arms crossed. Aunt Velma, ever the peacemaker, tried to keep things light, passing around mashed potatoes and asking about my classes. But the moment Dad cleared his throat, I knew what was coming. "Tamara," he said, his voice heavy, "it's time you fix this. Your sister needs your support now more than ever. You can still make things right." Mom nodded, her lips tight. "You've had your fun at school," she said. "Now it's Tatum's turn." I felt my stomach twist, but I wasn't the same person who'd sat through their guilt trips before. "Fix what?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "You've been pushing Tatum's dreams over mine for years, and it's gotten us nowhere." I turned to Tatum, who was glaring at her plate. "You had a chance in LA and you weren't ready. You've skipped lessons, ignored coaches, and quit every time it got hard. I'm not the one holding you back, you are." The room went silent. Mom's face flushed red. "That's unfair, Tamara," she snapped. "Your sister's talented. She just needs a little help." Dad leaned forward, his voice low. "You've always been fine on your own. Why can't you do this for her?" Before I could respond, Gail, who'd been quietly sipping her wine, set her glass down hard. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "I've seen this before, and it's not fair to Tamara." My cousin Gail had been invited by Aunt Velma, and her presence felt like a lifeline. "I tried the music thing," she continued, looking at Mom and Dad. "Tatum's got a spark, but she's not putting in the work. I've watched her audition tapes, sloppy phrasing, no stage presence. The industry won't wait for her to figure it out. She turned to Tatum, softer but firm. I'm not saying this to be mean, Tatum, but you're not ready, and banking on Tamara to fund your dreams is wrong. Mom and Dad looked stunned, their mouths open, unable to argue with Gail's blunt truth. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. I'm done carrying this, I said, standing up. I've worked too hard for my degree, my career, my life. I won't sacrifice it for a dream that's not mine, or one that Tatum doesn't even fight for. You've made your choices, and I've made mine. I grabbed my coat and walked out, ignoring Mom's pleas to stay. Aunt Velma followed me to the porch, her eyes soft. You did the right thing, she whispered, squeezing my hand. That night, I blocked Mom, Dad, and Tatum for good. It wasn't just about anger, it was about protecting my peace. Months later, I graduated with my nursing degree, my cap decorated with a tiny stethoscope. Dr. King's recommendation landed me a full-time nursing job at Bryan Medical Center with a starting salary of $60,000 a year. A year later, I moved into a small apartment in Lincoln, my first real space paid for with my own money. Carissa and Vance helped me unpack, turning it into a celebration with cheap wine and laughter. For the first time, I felt free not just from my family's demands, but from the weight of their expectations. Aunt Velma kept me updated, though I didn't ask for it. Mom and Dad were drowning in debt from the second mortgage, struggling to make payments after borrowing $50,000 for Tatum's music pursuits. The bank sent notices, and they faced the real possibility of losing our family home. Tatum, meanwhile, kept chasing auditions, but each one ended in rejection. Her confidence crumbled, and Aunt Velma said she'd stopped posting her usual dramatic updates online, retreating into a quiet slump. I felt a pang of sadness for her, but I couldn't fix her choices any more than I could fix Mom and Dad's. Looking back, I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Prioritizing myself didn't mean I stopped loving my family. It meant I valued my own worth. My parents' blind favoritism cost them their stability and pushed Tatum toward a dream she wasn't ready for, leaving her lost. I hope they find their way, but I can't carry that burden. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for listening. It's not easy to share, but it's real. If you've ever had to choose yourself over family pressure, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How did you find the strength to set boundaries? Share below, and let's keep this conversation going.